Hi everyone, Turd Flinging Monkey, how you doing? In my last two videos, I discussed the two groups of feminists that get the most attention. The young liberal arts majors who are given attention because they are attractive and young, and the professional victims who are given attention because they know how to be useful to the corrupt media that enables them in exchange for money. The problem is that these first two groups combined only make up a minority within the feminist movement when you consider the sheer numbers. The young liberal arts major feminists burn out quickly once they enter the real world, and there simply aren't that many open positions for professional victims. The media likes to keep their phone books simple and only needs about a handful of feminist quote-unquote experts that they tend to use on a regular basis. The other 95% of feminists fall within the third group. Whenever feminists organize a rally or protest, you'll notice that at the front of the group with the cameras, you'll find the young liberal arts majors, holding the biggest, brightest signs, smiling and providing a pretty face for the event. You'll also likely find the professional victim behind the podium, or holding the bullhorn for the group if they're not out in the crowd hawking their book or trying to spread the word about their latest Kickstarter project. But take a step back and look around. Look at the sea of humanity that the cameras rarely focus on. The heart and soul of feminists itself, the Misandric Landwhales. You'll notice that not all feminists are fat, although in general they are. I've chosen the term Landwhale to be a catch-all for all kinds of disgusting wretches. Of course you have your garden variety fat chicks, but you'll also find plenty of women from every definition of unattractive. And they're here to fight the system. No, not patriarchy. The system they're fighting against is reproductive instinct. In a video I released earlier called MGTOW She'll Never Love You, I explained that both men and women are largely controlled by biological urges and impulses that we share with primitive animals. If you missed that video, go check it out and come back after you've finished. I'll be right here when you get back. Okay, so as I was saying, our primitive impulses can overpower our rationality. What we perceive as our wants and desires are actually nothing more than biological urges and impulses from our more primitive brain. Men are naturally attracted to youth and beauty because they are signs of fertility and health. Our primitive brain desires to reproduce with a healthy and fertile mate in order to produce strong offspring. This is nature and we can't change it. There is a dark side to nature, though. In the animal world of survival of the fittest, the unfit die. Now, in the grand scheme of things, it's objectively better for the progress of the species for the fit to reproduce and the unfit to die out. But imagine if you were one of those unfit. Wouldn't you fight for your own survival? Of course you would. Which is why, despite the advantages of a competitive capitalist economy, many will choose a socialist economy because although collectively we're all worse off, the unfit would suffer in a competitive environment and thus are individually better off. It's bitterly ironic that systems that promote the individual promote the welfare of the collective, and systems that promote the collective only benefit a select number of individuals at the expense of the collective. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Let's return to how all of this relates to unattractive feminists. Women have depended on men for resources and protection since the dawn of humanity itself. Women are wired to seek out resources, and men are wired to compete against other males and accumulate resources in order to attract a mate. The female and the male find each other, sex and babies happen, and eventually here we all are watching YouTube videos. Now imagine being a woman that no one wants to mate with. In ye olden times, these women were called spinsters and old maids. Many of these women were labeled as crazy or sometimes even witches. It's a little sad, but what would the solution be? You can't force men to marry these ugly women in order to take care of them. Even though dating sites and Tinder give unattractive women unparalleled access to men, the best they're going to find is someone looking for a cheap lay. Now, from a Darwinist standpoint, you wouldn't want these ugly, undesirable women reproducing. Even if they were lonely and ridiculed, it would be better for humanity as a collective to let their genes die out naturally. I'm not saying round them up and execute them for being ugly. I'm just saying that nobody has a right to marriage and a family. At least that's how things used to work until the creation of the welfare state. Now women don't need to worry about attracting a man for resources. They can get as fat and bitchy as they want, and the government will take care of them. How did this happen? We gave women the right to vote. Call me extreme, call me a misogynist, but I'm spot on and I'll prove it right now. The United States was founded in 1776 with no welfare state. Black people could vote in the United States starting in 1870, still no welfare state. The U.S. had open immigration until 1914. Still no welfare state. Women were given the right to vote in 1920, and by 1935, welfare state. Now, I know that correlation doesn't always equal causation, so let's look at a few other countries and see if this theory holds up. Canada, established in 1867, women began voting in 1921, welfare state by 1940. Modern England, established in 1694, women began voting in 1928, welfare state by 1934. Sweden, established in 1397, women began voting in 1921, welfare state by 1937. Sweden is the poster child for the modern welfare state, and yet they did fine without one for more than 500 years. But as soon as women could vote, boom, welfare state. I tried to find a single example of a country where the welfare state developed without women first being given the right to vote, and I couldn't find a single example. If anybody out there knows one, let me know in the comments section. So what is feminism when you really get down to it? I think Rush Limbaugh was close when he said feminism was established so as to allow unattractive women access to the mainstream of society. I'll go a step further, and I'll say that feminism was created for women to use the government to redistribute men's resources to them who wouldn't voluntarily share those resources due to them being too fat, ugly, crazy, or generally unfit for companionship and reproduction. Each wave of feminism demands more and more of the resources of men, and now they're not even content simply with our money. Look at this man-spreading bullshit. These entitled fat bitches are using the government to force men to give up their seat for women. What's next? Man-sitting, where men aren't pulling chairs out for every woman that wants to sit down? Man-walking, where men aren't holding doors open for women? It's not enough that you're using the government to take our money. You want us to treat you like we're on a date? Ultimately, though, nothing is ever enough. Even after the government gives them our money through welfare redistribution, and even after men are forced to be polite to them out of fear of being charged with a crime, they ultimately face the same fate as the spinsters and old maids 100 years ago. Nobody's going to love them, nobody's going to marry them, nobody's going to reproduce with them, at least voluntarily. Quick note, guys. Never believe a woman who says she's on birth control, and never throw your used condoms in the trash where she can dig them out and sperm jack you after you leave. Flush that shit down the toilet and put a clean condom full of horseradish sauce in the trash instead. The sauce is white and looks like jizz. You can get small individual packets of it from Arby's for free. It's called horsey sauce. If the woman digs the condom out and tries to insert it into herself, you'll know. This idea isn't mine. I got it from Tom Likas. Anyway, back on topic. They may get your money, but it's not the same as a real man. Just like jerking off to porn isn't the same as a real woman. That's why feminists keep adding new grievances and demands. They want the government to be the husband they'll never have. But the government can never be what they truly want, which is why they hate men. It's a hatred born of envy. This is why when attractive women get naked and men like it, it's objectification. But when ugly feminists run around with their National Geographic boobs swaying in the breeze in front of children, it's empowerment. Now, why bother engaging with these feminists? They are interested in an honest debate, and unlike the professional victim that avoids debate out of fear of exposure, the misandric Landwhale does it as a survival mechanism. They need to believe they are victims in order to justify their parasitic lifestyle. Evil people never want to think of themselves as evil. They always find some way to justify themselves or shift the blame to someone else so they can sleep at night. These feminists are no different. They must fabricate a reality where nothing is their fault because the truth is too painful to face, especially since these women have already proved incapable of dealing with the pain of regular basic exercise. They aren't interested in facts or rational argument. Feminism is a religion to them. And if you've noticed the fervor people can have when defending a religion, imagine how much more committed they are when their religion is also the source of their income and survival. So how do you deal with them? When confronting a misandric Landwhale, always bring a camera and some backup. The Landwhale is the kind of feminist most likely to become violent, especially if you smell like food. And if you fight back, watch out for the swarm of white knights that will swoop in to beat your ass for daring to defend yourself. If it's all on camera, you should be able to avoid prison, although you'll still likely be arrested, and the cops may try to erase your footage, so make sure you have more than one camera rolling if you choose this path. As you might have guessed, it's better to just leave them to stew in their misery and mock them from a distance. I would have pity for them, but they're taking my money and destroying civilization. I can't hate them for doing what's natural, but I have a message and a warning for any men hearing my voice. Men, please remember this one thing and teach it to others. Once the welfare state and civilization collapse, it will need to be rebuilt by men, as it always has been. When you rebuild civilization, you must never let women vote again. I'm not saying women should be enslaved or mistreated. Women should be equal before the law and have all the rights of life, liberty, and property. They just should never be able to vote. It sounds harsh, but we don't let children vote because they're not responsible. But women aren't responsible either, according to feminism. If a man and a woman have drunken consensual sex, the man is guilty of raping her, according to feminism, because women aren't responsible. Female teachers can rape boys as young as 10, and feminists claim that the female teachers are the victims, because according to feminism, a woman is less responsible than a 10-year-old boy. If we wouldn't let 10-year-old boys vote, by their own standards, women shouldn't be allowed to vote either. Now, I realize that there's no point debating this with women, even conservative women that may support a smaller government. Indeed, even if women could be convinced rationally how this would benefit society as a whole, they wouldn't support losing their right to vote and thus access to men's resources through government force. However, we don't need to do anything but wait and watch as the welfare state and the system collapse, and then we rebuild again, as we always have done. Hopefully this time, a little wiser. Well, that's the end of my series on the 3 types of feminists. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section, or if you have any ideas for future videos. If you like my content, please subscribe. I would like to thank my nearly 1,000 current subscribers for their support, and for the MGTOW that have shared and plugged my videos. With this series in the bag, I look forward to beginning a new one, and I hope you'll join me. See you then.